All right, why don't we get started? A couple of announcements. On March 21, there'll be a rally at Chase Bank in downtown Chicago to stop financing fossil fuels. This is a part of a nationwide day of action in many US cities, organized really by Third Act, and we typically help them and join them. It's going to have dozens of organizations participating. Another one would be on March 27th, Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition will hold a protest at Peoples Gas headquarters. Peoples is asking for a rate increase despite having made record profits for several years. So we're basically telling them, no, we don't like that. And for more information in the chat, Cynthia Linton is our communications chair. Her name and email is in there. You can contact her for more information. Also, I am in there as chapter chair. Pam is in there as campaigns chair, and Bruce Mazer, who couldn't be here tonight, is also. Contact any of us for anything that happens tonight if you want more information. We will get a copy of the YouTube video, the link to that out to everybody in attendance, and we'll get the copies of the slides, Chris's slides and my slides as well. So the last one is, and I'll share this screen here. This is the election. I wanted to update everybody about the leadership in the chapter. So can you all see this screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this is our leadership committee now for the year for Chicago metro area. And you can see while we didn't get as many people as we had hoped to volunteer for positions, we do have a good set of staff of people wanted to continue in positions. You can see their names: Bruce Mainzer for vice chair, Pam Tate is campaigns chair, and Cynthia Linton, as I mentioned before, communications chair, with Jane Goldberg helping her on newsletters and things like that. We are looking for somebody for a public education chair, and this would help us with whether it's maintaining tables at events or helping us with presentations or best practices about public education. So if you're a teacher or in related industry, think you could help, just let us know. The membership is also open. We've had one of our members, Molly, who's really helped us out for the last year. What we'd like to do is trying to really increase engagement in the chapter. We have probably about 700 members of the chapter, but we want to increase how many people are involved in various teams. And later on in the night, I'm going to be doing a few slides on the strategic plan, and I'll mention all our teams. And so this way here, you could see places where you could line up. We also have these at-large chairs, Christina Murphy, who will be speaking right after I get through here, and she'll be talking about the subject tonight. Karen Data is also at-large chair. She runs our trees team. Danica Sun is chair number 3, at-large chair number 3. She leads our youth movement, and she had quite a splash in the Chicago Tribune. What was it, a week or so ago, about the protest in downtown Chicago, where large numbers of people gathered for protest at Chase Bank, including a die-in. And then there's Jeff Green, who is joining us as at-large position number 4. He runs our divest, defund, and desponsor group. So we'll talk more about the groups in a bit. And so what I'd like to do is stop the share, and I'd like to introduce the IRA incentives, stretch codes, and methods for public speaking. Climate reality leader and certified climate professional Chris Murphy will speak to us tonight. She'll walk through how it all works. The time's right to get rebates, tax credits, and electrify your appliances, install solar panels, buy electric vehicles. Christina also co-leads our Suburban Climate Action team. So Chris, thank you for speaking. Go for it.
Thank you, Tom. I just want to say, hold your questions to the end of the 3 presentations. I want to make sure I get through all these slides, and you can go ahead if you're thinking about them, put your questions and comments in the chat, and then we'll get to them all at one time after the presentations. So the Inflation Reduction Act passed last August, and it provides $269 billion for energy security and emission reduction investments with an emphasis on our disadvantaged communities. Now, you people that are attending from other states, these are federal incentives, so they apply to you as well. They're not just Illinois or Chicago. So everybody in the country is qualified for these. And there will be federal tax credits and rebates. These are for homeowners and renters, and they will be available beginning this year all the way through 2032 for electrification and energy efficiency improvements within your home. There's different credits and incentives available for businesses, for schools, municipalities. So just wanted to emphasize these are for us, the homeowner. And then those rebates, they are subject to income limitations. So I will go into that in a few slides, because I do think that's really important to who is going to qualify for these rebates. You want to make sure you're understanding if you are eligible for that rebate. And most importantly, you can really benefit from these when you combine them with your state and local incentives. So there, you can stack them is what we call. So just wanted to let you know that. So getting started, there's a lot of different incentives. We're going to start with electric upgrades on your home. So that's updating your breaker box and your electric wiring. So some old homes only have 100 amp service. Most newer homes have 200 amp, which is what's recommended when you are electrifying your home. Basically, you're converting all your gas appliances to electric appliances. So everything's running off of electricity. No more gas is what we're aiming for, because we're burning methane, and that we know that's a greenhouse gas and bad for our indoor air quality. So here's a chart. It lists the upfront discount, which we call the rebate, and if it's subject to income limitations in the next column. And then finally, the federal tax credit. So you can see some of these items are not going to be available for tax credit, but they will be available for rebate. And so how this works is, if you get a rebate, it's up to that amount, like for a breaker box, up to $4,000. And then with the income limitation, if you're low income, you get 100% of the amount up to $4,000. If you're moderate income, you're up to your 50% up to $4,000. So we'll go into that a little bit more too. Appliances, stoves or ranges, clothes dryers, air source heat pumps, which replaces both your furnace and your air conditioner. So you'll notice that, you have a pretty high amount here for a rebate, $8,000. Your water heater, and of course, geothermal heating as well, which most people probably won't do because it's pretty expensive up front, but it is included. Just wanted to let you know that. And so continuing on, there's a lot of energy efficiency improvements we can do our home. That way we use less energy to begin with. So we call it weatherization, which is insulation, sealing off all the cracks and little holes in our home where the energy just leaks out. We've got some doors and windows that may be leaky as well, so that qualifies under this program. And then where you usually start is a home energy audit. So you figure out, where is my home leaking energy out to the outside? So you want to do that first. So again, here's the chart for rebates and income limitations and federal tax credits. There's two different programs for whole home energy rebates, homes and HERA. And so that gets a little bit more complicated. I will get into that in a few more slides and give you some links that you can dive into, but I will say that those get a little complicated. Also, renewable energy. So you can generate your own electricity with rooftop solar, wind turbines, if you're in an area that really supports that. Here in Chicagoland, with our houses being close together and height restrictions, probably won't work unless you have a bigger property, probably, 1.5 acres or bigger. So in our city limits here, that doesn't really work too well. And if you want to add battery storage, that also qualifies for the federal tax rebate. So like I said, I was going to dive a little bit more into these whole home energy incentives. So here's a chart from Rewiring America. And so it kind of breaks it down. The HERA is really, I think, aimed more at low income households and maybe some benefit to moderate income, depending what you need to get done. And it's the max rebate there is $14,000. And so they list the different amounts there. And I also included the link so you can go there and find out more. The homes, that's basically probably what most people end up using, and different credits for different things, different amounts, depending on how much energy you're going to save in your house, how much you need to improve it. So that's there for you. And now getting into the income limitations. So this is based on the area median income for your area. So I pulled the chart here on the left for Chicago area, and I did simplify it a little bit because if you look at the chart that's online, it gives household size down to like 10 people, and it gives all the different income levels. And really, this program is defined as low income 80% or less, and moderate income is from 81% to 151 or 150%. So basically, if you identify in this chart here, what's the number of people in your household, go across. If you make more money, say your household of 4, if you make more money than $83,000, you're not low income. If you make more than 156, then you're not moderate income, you're high income. And if you fall somewhere, if you're making like 125, you're in that moderate income block. So that's what I have there. And I also included, Inflation Reduction also includes some electric vehicle incentives. So I do have this in here. I don't want to get too in depth because these are changing probably next month from the IRS. They're working on some issues with the domestic manufacturing requirements. But just so you're aware, there are income limitations. There are also where they're going to go from a tax credit to an upfront rebate next year, they're saying. And it's also for used, not just new. And if you really want to, if you have a lot of questions on this, Tom Coleman is the expert. So I suggest that you contact him. Oops. So planning for electrifying your home. I like this calculator from Rewiring America, which I did provide the website there too. So what you do is you go to this website and then you put in the number of people in your household, your zip code, your income, and what it'll do is it'll pull that table, that income table, and it'll look at what you qualify based on your income. So then it lays out exactly what you qualify for. Are you qualified for these rebates? Are you qualified for this federal tax, which federal tax credits? So it's a really great tool. I mean, this stuff is pretty confusing. So I really recommend this tool because it really just lays it out very nicely and gives you a great idea of exactly what you qualify for so you can start planning. And Rewiring America also has a Go Electric and Electrify Everything in Your Home guide. I've read through most of these and they're really great to kind of tell you how to go about doing this in your own home. So I really recommend those. So when you're planning for electrification of your home, there's not one right answer. Everybody's home is a little different. Things are going to break that you may want to replace sooner than buying another gas appliance and waiting. And so, you may be doing these things out of order, but there are some contingencies you should be aware of. So what I recommend is that you do this top row of things in the boxes there first. And then from left to right, you do that next row. And so the left side there deals with your home energy efficiency. So you do that energy audit first, find out where your house is leaking. If you need new windows, what do you need to do? Then you do your weatherization. So you do that. And you really want to seal up your home and make sure you're not wasting a lot of energy before you replace your HVAC, before you get that heat pump. Because if you don't, you're probably going to get a heat pump that's sized bigger than you need, so it's going to be more expensive. So I really recommend this weatherization before you do your heat pump. And at any time, depending on how much, you know, what kind of electrical service your house has, you may need to upgrade your breaker box and your wiring. And when you start looking at that, you probably want to look at everything I'm going to electrify and do it all at once if you can. So for myself, like I know I need to add a bunch of 240-volt outlets, one in my garage, one in my kitchen, probably a few in my basement for some of these other things, one in my laundry room. So I'm going to try to knock that out and my weatherization this year. I'm also getting solar panels any day now because my permit was just approved. And you can really do solar panels anytime in this process. That is based on your current electricity bill. But when you think about it, if you then weatherize your home, your energy needs should go down. But then when you electrify everything, your energy use might go up. So you can always add a couple more panels later on if you find out, oh, I didn't size this quite right now for my house being completely electrified. And especially if you get that electric vehicle and you're charging off that all the time, that you may really want to, you know, add a few more panels if you have room on your roof. So the idea here is there's no right way to go about electrifying your house, but you do need to be aware of the contingencies. Like you need to have that 240-volt outlet before you order that new stove, that new induction stove. So because this is kind of confusing and because we're trying to get the information out there, I created these fact sheets. So you can email people, you can take them to events and pass them out. And it doesn't exclude the electric vehicle incentives now. We were gonna do that separate. But I recently presented at a library event. I took these with me so people could take them home. It's got the links on the bottom to the calculator I mentioned and to all these different other programs. So it provides a lot of information in just 3 pages. It's a nice reminder of the presentation I gave for people. So that way they're able to remember all these little details that I had talked about during my presentation. So with that, I will switch to the next presentation. Let me get that up. So next I'm going to talk about the stretch code. Okay. Oops. Hold on a second. Make sure this is working.
It's
Okay,
working now.
there we go. Took a little back and forth technology. So let's talk about the stretch code. Hopefully you heard about the stretch code coming. And so let me start off by saying first here that emissions from our buildings, electricity and the methane gas that they're using, it's in the top 4 of our emissions. Like our buildings are a big problem. They waste a lot of energy. And so we're very fortunate when the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act passed, they actually allowed for the first time ever in Illinois to have this stretch code. So what is a stretch code? It's a higher level than the base code for energy efficiency. And I included the link there because Illinois did put out some information on it. And so why do we care about a stretch code? This stretch code is going to increase our energy efficiency of our buildings. It's going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and it's going to save us all money on our utility bills. So I want to talk a little bit about these targets and what it means, because they're writing the code right now, but they put out the provisions in the energy efficiency targets so people can start, so people can really start figuring out what is coming, is basically, especially in the developer and builder community. So these were laid out by CEJA. These are in CEJA if you want to look for them, but these are the targets for the code. So 50% more efficient than the most recent code next year for residential. And this kind of lays out lays out for commercial and residential. And then the stretch code is going to be updated every 2 years, 2 years or so. But this was all laid out by CEJA. So it will continue to basically march our energy efficiency down towards net zero for our buildings, which you may have heard, we can already build a net zero home or a net zero building, but it's a little bit more expensive. And a lot of times it just doesn't happen right now. It's not the standard if you're looking for a new building. So, but we're getting there. We're moving in the right direction with the stretch code. So one thing to know, because we're talking about energy efficiency, is energy use intensity. So, you know, all of our buildings are different sizes. And so how do we compare them against each other? Well, we can't just say, I use this much energy and you use that much energy, because it's not a good comparison, because our homes are different sizes. So we use this intensity where we say we use this much energy per square foot. So that's a good way to compare. So this chart kind of shows how the codes have evolved. So you can see on the left of this chart here, that's the codes that have already been in existence and how they've stepped down over time. And then on the right, the line there, that is how the stretch code will continue improving energy efficiency and energy usage downward. So that's for residential. Okay, this is not moving. Oops, not moved twice. Okay, so so these provisions that they put out, Capital Development Board in Illinois put out, here's what they said they're going to write into the stretch code, that you have to meet these energy targets without renewables. So you can't just put a bunch of solar panels on and offset your energy usage. You can't do that. They may require heat pumps. They are kind of on the fence about that. They had a public comment period and wanting to get some feedback from people. So we'll see if that ends up staying in there or not. Water heating, insulating your water heaters and your pipes and things like that to make sure that the energy is not being wasted. Making sure your house is more efficient, that your windows are tight, that you have lighter colored shingles to act as a cool roof, so it doesn't absorb as much energy as, say, a dark roof. Sealing your air ducts off so you don't waste a bunch of energy. Energy Star appliances, smart thermostats, solar ready. So that means everything, all the conduits there for when you're ready to install solar panels. Electric ready, which means that those 240-volt outlets are going to be there in a new home. So you're not going to have to rip up your house and put them in. So that to me is a big thing. Like, we need to be ready. Electric vehicle ready, same thing. Having that 240-volt outlet in your garage already there. And they're talking about one of the ways to meet these requirements is called this Passive House Institute certification, which to me that's really great, because then you should be able to qualify for this thing called an energy efficient mortgage, which actually allows you to have a greater debt to income ratio. So a new house that's more energy efficient might be a little bit more expensive up front, but you can get this loan that allows you to buy a more expensive home. And then your energy bills every month are going to be a lot lower. So you're going to have a lot more disposable income to pay off that loan. So that's the principle behind that. Makes sense. And you pay it kind of upfront and save the money later on. So for commercial, they also have separate energy efficiency targets. So I show them here on the screen how they're marching down. And here's the provisions for commercial. There's a lot more than residential. Obviously, bigger buildings have a lot of different needs, especially lighting and elevators, boilers, that kind of thing. So I don't want to go through all these, but I think it's very positive, especially with the on-site renewables. So you would have to be able to generate 10 to 12% of your estimated building energy, or be required, if you can't do that, to contract with off-site renewable energy. So what's next? So like I said, the Illinois Capital Development Board is writing this language right now. It should be available by the end of July. So that way your municipality can review it and hopefully start the process to adopt it. So if you have questions about this, reach out to our Suburban team. We can help you. But what we're trying to encourage everybody to speak to your local officials, your building code officials, and encourage them to adopt this stretch code. Even go to your city council meeting and give a public comment why this stretch code is important. Some people still haven't heard about it. So we want to make sure, first of all, that they're aware of it. And then we want to tell them why it's a good thing and why we want them to adopt it. Excuse me. So again, I created some fact sheets for everybody to use, talking points. You can send these to your elected officials. And that way kind of educate them at the same point. That way they have a nice list in front. So that's available for you if you need to, if you want to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and go to the next presentation is how do you become, how do you sign up to become a public speaker? So we're just talking about the stretch code's important. You want to go and tell your elected officials why it's important and how. And so this is how you sign up to be a public speaker at your community's meetings. So some people don't know, but you have 3 minutes at each public meeting to speak, voice your concern, praise some actions that your city council have taken, educate the audience, including city council. So that way you can go, you can ask your elected officials publicly to take action on some of these initiatives that will increase our resilience to climate change. So I want to run through a little bit of a demonstration here. Each community is different, so go to your community's website and hopefully it should be pretty close to the front page of your website there, because this is a public process. They should have it pretty easy to find, but sometimes you need to do a little search. But you should be able to find something on, how to be a public speaker or how to sign up. So here on the left, what I have is that's City of Aurora. That's their website there. And for them, you have to call the alderman's office and tell them that you want to speak at tonight's meeting, or you have to get there a few minutes early and they have a sign-in sheet and put your name down. So that way they know to call you during public comment. And then on the right here, we've got Naperville's. They have it on their website. You can just click on it and then it takes you to some other pages here. It takes you to this page, and here in Naperville, you're able to actually make a written comment, or you're able to sign up to do that live comment. And here again, on the left of this page, they remind you of the rules for participation, that you've got 3 minutes, that kind of some guidelines on what you can and can't say, but basically you can give a comment on anything you want, even if it's not on the agenda. And so what I like to do for communities that I'm involved in, I like to sign up for their email updates. And what they do is they email me when the city council agenda is available. And here's an example of Naperville's email. And then at the bottom, very convenient there, they provide me the link there to sign up to speak. So that's nice because I see something on the agenda, like, oh, I need to make a comment on that. Now I can just click on there and I'm ready to go. So here's some tips when you're going to make a public comment if you've never done this before. Write your comment out, type it out, practice reading it at home, time yourself, make sure it's under that 3 minutes, because if it's not, they can and will cut you off. They'll tell you to stop. And you might be midpoint, so you really want to make sure that you can get in under 3 minutes. And again, look up the rules, follow those rules. Basically, you want to be courteous and professional, no personal attacks. You really shouldn't, call out a specific person on what they've done or didn't do. And remember, this is being recorded on their website for everybody to see. So again, be courteous. And I did include some example links here. These are from the Naperville City Council meetings. The task force there provides regular public comments on these environmental issues. So you can see kind of how they do it. The last comment there is kind of unusual because usually what happens, when they'll even tell you this in the rules, that elected officials are not supposed to respond directly to your comment. They're just supposed to sit there and listen. And then when you're done, and they're supposed to move on with their business. But in that third video example there, City Council does ask the presenter to ask, they ask them a question. So, occasionally that could happen. It just kind of depends. Some city councils are real, strict, and other ones are a little bit more lenient. So just so you know, be prepared for that. And I did include a brochure here from Aurora on giving a public comment. So you can read over that if you don't find those rules on your own website. So next steps, if you need assistance with drafting a public comment, our Suburban team can help you. We will help you if you have a certain subject you want, or just want some QC, whatever you want, we can help you. We already have a bunch of public comments written. So, maybe you say, oh, I want to give one on stretch code, and we'll say, okay, here you go. Here's our comment, and you can feel free to edit it and make some other comments in there if you want. But basically the bulk of the work there is done for you. And then if you give a public comment, we have a tracking sheet. So log it in, let us know that you did it. We really want to make sure that our elected officials are hearing us, especially about emissions reductions. And then after you give your public comment, usually within a few days, what I'll do is I will email them my written comment. And then if there's a fact sheet available, I'll attach that for them. And then I'll, put a nice little email and say, if you have any questions, please reach out, please contact me. And sometimes, depending on the subject, you may want to ask for a follow-up meeting or a phone call. And so, hopefully this is a way to get the dialogue started about climate action in your community. So with that, I am done. Tom, did you want to take some questions now, or did you want to wait till after you're done? You're on mute.
Yeah, there's two parts to the meeting. I think it's important to do at least, maybe 10 minutes of questions that people had, and then we can move on to the second part. And anything we don't cover, Chris and I will take a look at all the chat. We'll make sure to get, answers to your question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, let me look here quick at the chat and see if there's anything I can start answering. Couldn't see the chat when I was presenting. So, okay, question about the geothermal heat pumps. So, or about rebates for that. I don't believe there's a rebate for that. I think that's just a federal tax credit. So up to 30% of the installation and equipment costs is what I believe that was. There's a comment here about claiming carbon negative assets and offsets on the property. Is that possible under IRA? I'm not sure about that. I don't know much about that. I don't know if Tom or anyone else does. John is asking about specific air source heat pump qualifying. Yes, it does. It's capped, I believe. Look at that chart. It's capped, I think, at $2,000 for a tax credit, 30% up to $2,000. Geothermal heat pump qualifies for rebate. Oh no, the geothermal is only the tax credit, and that's pretty expensive. So I don't think most people, unless you're pretty rich and you have a lot of land, that you're going to do that, because they have to drill down into the earth and put a bunch of pipes. That's how it works. It brings the heat up from a couple, I forget the depth, but I know they have to bring out big drills, and it's pretty expensive, so most people don't do it. Real quick here, looking at some other questions. Don, the rebate, I don't know if you'll be able to qualify if you did the work before, because it has to be, I think you have to pay for it starting in 2023 or going forward. So you might have been ahead of the curve there. And so I want to quickly take some questions too from
Yeah,
people that
Hobie's,
have their hand raised.
yeah,
Yeah,
Hobie's got one.
yeah. Go ahead, Hobie.
Thanks, Chris. This is very helpful. And I have a lot of appreciation for the IRA. I kind of have a comment, and that is some of the rebates and incentives are good for middle income people, or people that are on the early adopter side of the chasm in terms of adopting new technology, but it still is really very complicated. And I use myself as an example because I just built an auxiliary dwelling unit, and I've tried to make it as energy efficient as possible here. But in my small house, yeah, I did some weatherization, but the idea that people will all of a sudden start spending, this is a little bit of cynicism here, start spending $12, $15, $20,000 to electrify, as opposed to put money into the college fund for the kids or buy a new truck, is going to be tough. So in Decatur, what we're trying to do is we set ourselves a BHAG goal. We want to electrify and weatherize half of the city's residential implementations. And there are lots of barriers to doing that, but one of the things that I think we're trying to do is lower that investment threshold, because it means you have to invest now to get a benefit later. And yes, we get savings on things, and that's good, but it only works up here. It doesn't work on an emotional basis. And so there are a couple of things that people are doing around the country, like, I don't know if you know about Sealed Inc. in upstate New York. They are essentially constructing a SEPA agreement for home energy and electrification, so that somebody can get into it for almost nothing and still save for the college fund and pay for it out of savings and, a green loan to the company.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, there's just there's this personal scope, and then there's this how big can we do it scope. And I'm sorry, Megan, I don't mean to monopolize this
no,
conversation.
it's okay. One thing I did forget to mention, I kind of blasted through these slides, is there's some towns that are kind of undertaking this and setting up these financing banks, like Ithaca, New York, I believe. But obviously that's a very, it's only a few places that are doing that. But this summer, based on, or this is from the from IRA, EPA is supposed to release what they call the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, $27 billion. There's a breakdown there, but most of it is supposed to go to community banks, credit unions, basically nonprofit banks for green financing. It's called Green Bank. And so we're kind of waiting to hear what the rules are going to be. They're working on all this. And so that will be a really great way for, if you want to do all these things, but you don't have the savings, or you don't want to, take away from contributing to your kid's college fund, this green financing will be there. And what I've heard is it's supposed to, be available, especially to disadvantaged people that may not have a great credit history, that kind of thing as well, to make sure that we're not leaving people behind. Because, if we all do this and have the money to do it, and then we're leaving a certain segment of the population behind, their energy burden goes up and ours is going down. It's not really fair. So they're trying to make sure there's, it's equitable. And so keep an eye out for these green banks. And when they do come about, I'm sure that we will be talking about them here. We will try to let you know. So, but just so you know, they're coming. I mean, I know it feels like.
I've been looking all over, and indeed, I'll come back to this group because I've got dinner with Luis Aguirre Torres out of Ithaca next month on the 14th, just simply to discuss how do they do it in Ithaca.
Good, let us know.
That'd
Yeah,
be
yeah.
great. Sorry,
Oh,
yeah, thanks for,
I think we have time for two more questions. Alex, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, let's get Alex next.
Well, thanks, Tom and Krista. Yeah, so I have a question about the carbon negative assets. I have about 10 really big Doug firs on my property. And I know the IRA specifically includes carbon capture and storage in there. They actually give tax rebates for that. And it's mostly used by huge companies like companies I happen to dislike, like Exxon and Chevron and Shell. And so I'm wondering if I could actually just claim the trees on my, I'm a forester, so I've actually calculated the offsets they produce, and it's several tons per year. Is there a way that I'd be able to file with the IRS under the IRA, like as an individual?
Yeah, unfortunately not. It's gonna be for those big projects, those big industrial projects. There's one going on right now in Iceland. They're talking about trying to get one going in Southern Illinois for Prairie State. There's already some opposition by the landowners down there because you need pretty big pipes to capture it and then put it into the rock formations, which is not always right next to the coal plant there. So unfortunately, no, our trees won't count. And, you know, I know we do a lot of with tree initiatives, tree ordinances, tree preservation. So we're going to need to keep doing that. But unfortunately, we're just not going to get any credit for it from the federal government. So
Why don't you go ahead, Victor?
yeah, go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. This was awesome. I guess, so for context, I'm a renter. I actually just had a 240-volt outlet installed by offering to split the cost with my landlord. But I guess related to questions around electrification, you were mentioning with like towns, like what policies would you hope to see from like city governments to encourage like existing buildings that maybe aren't planning on having a gut rehab to electrify? So like think like, 1950s apartment building, no need for a rehab.
Right. So multifamily buildings, apartment buildings, condo buildings can fall under actually commercial from the city standpoint of view. And one of the things you may hear about in some of these cities, not quite here in the suburbs yet, Chicago's kind of moving that way, but they call it building energy benchmarking and building performance standards. And what it does is you measure, you get the energy bills for all the big buildings, the commercial buildings, and you put them in this EPA program and you figure out how much energy per square footage is all these buildings using. And then you look at the ones that score the lowest, that are using the most energy, and you kind of start looking at why. Is there a certain process going on in that building, or is this just a really old building with a lot of leaks that could be retrofitted and very much improved? And so then what they do, New York City actually has this pretty strict program they just implemented this year called I think it's called Local Law 97. But anyway, they are imposing strict fines on building owners that don't meet those requirements, that aren't not doing the retrofits that they need to do to bring their energy usage down. Like, I mean, millions of dollars in fines to force them to do these things. And of course, these big buildings in New York, they're not owned by your mom and pop, people up the street. They are literally owned by large corporations. So they also are going to get some tax credits to do that and write-offs. So, New York City said, we know you guys can do this, you just need to do it. And so that law just went into effect. But, we watch these laws across the country and we try to bring that here and apply those same principles. So there are communities here. Naperville is one of them that is talking about doing a benchmarking and performance standard. But it's going to take a little while to get city council on board and to adopt that and then to get the program started. And they'll probably need to hire somebody or a consultant to do all that work. So but I wanted to touch real quick on renters because I didn't say too much about that. Talked a lot about homeowners. So if you're a renter and you buy a new, sometimes renters will take their own fridges and stoves with them. So those appliances would count for incentives. Also, if you buy a window unit air conditioning or a portable unit that just vents out the window, those also count for IRA incentives. So you can take them with you, but they still count.
So we're short of time, but Dean, do you have a quick question?
I do, and greetings. I'm calling in from Houston. I'm actually the leader of the Climate Business Working Group. Perhaps some of you have seen some of our emails and stuff. So I'm here to make a pitch because anything that everybody's talking about IRA, I'm attending, and Chris, you did a great job. What I want to put out to you is we are setting up teams in each one of the chapters to really focus on small businesses because they all have buildings, right? So some of them work out of their home, but a lot of them work out of buildings. And so we want to say the exact same thing, Chris, that you talked about tonight, but get that message to the business community. We've got a team that we're working on. Join us on the hub. I'm going to put a posting in the chat. And we have a call every third Monday of the month. We have one coming up on the 20th, but find us on the hub, join our group, volunteer from your chapter to help us get the word out. Because after the training, we're going to mobilize and we're going to start hitting the business community. So
Good.
great job,
you.
everybody.
All right.
And thank you for letting me join.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
We'll follow up with you and
Well-
talk some more, okay?
Yeah, yeah. And any other questions we didn't resolve, put it in the chat. We do have another 15 minutes or so. I'd like to walk through just some key things of what the chapter's doing in terms of the teams that we have and why we're doing it, what our mission is and that sort of thing. So I'll try and be as brief as I can with this, but this is like some key parts of our strategic plan that I wanted to show that's on the agenda. So everybody see this okay? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we have this 5-part series of steps that we went through to set the stage because our new leadership team begins in April, and we went through over the last couple of months these 5 stages to arrive at what it is that we're going to do for next year and how we're going to mobilize our actions. So the first step we went through is this discovery about what can we discover about the urgent things happening in the environment. The next one is kind of the core ideology of why we exist, our mission and vision. The next step was, what must we deliver to achieve our vision, to respond to the climate crisis in terms of our imperatives. Then the strategic goals. We'll talk about the teams, what, some of the key goals are, and we'll make sure to get it out to you because we're kind of doing a whirlwind view of this today. And you can read this on your own, join teams, and decide if you want to stay or move to another team. And then finally, one slide on our priorities. So with that said, if we move into that first step right now, we all know that global warming or the climate crisis is really historic. Concentrations of carbon dioxide unmatched in 2 million years, glacial retreat 2,000 years, last decade warmer than any period in the last 125,000 years. And you can read down this list. We'll get this out to you. But anybody who doesn't understand that we're in serious trouble in terms of having to respond to this, these are facts. In fact, since 2002, 20 of the last 21 years have been the hottest years on record. In the last 8 years, the hottest ever. And northern Greenland is already at that temperature that we're trying to hit, the 1.5 degrees or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. It's already there. And in fact, if we look at what happened back in the quote old days of 1980s, when we had 3 extreme weather events, each year, $21 billion a year, 297 people killed. Well, it's nothing like today where it's now 20 extreme weather events, 144 billion on average, and 487 people dead per year. So why is this happening? So you can see here at the bottom of the page, 27% of our emissions are in transportation, 25 electricity generation, 24 in industry. So about 75% of all our greenhouse gas emissions are these 3 areas. And then we have agriculture, which should be a net, it should absorb greenhouse gases, but unfortunately, the way we do agriculture and livestock, it's an emitter. And you can see commercial and residential. And a lot of this energy that you see here is going to be used in EVs and over here, definitely in residential. So, carbon dioxide, you can see the methane, et cetera, up here. And, when Chris was talking about electric stoves and induction stoves, a lot of people don't know it, but natural gas is like 80 or 85% methane. So it's serious stuff. And so we thought we'd just share real quick what's happened in terms of land use and emissions. So when we look at, let's say, go back 170 years to we were at 280 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere back then, and the world was, pretty good back then. But unfortunately, between now and 2020, we've burned all this coal, drilled for all this oil and burned it, and gasoline and everything, natural gas, cement, and the way we use land, whether it's livestock or burning trees down and cutting trees down. Well, that's what's happened. That's the buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Now, the good news is, our land has absorbed a lot of that back, and the oceans as well. But if you can see in this chart, you might have to move the window if it's on your screen, but we're at about 420 parts per million. So we've gone from 280 to 420. So now we're in like serious trouble. So when you look at what has happened, and you look at these emissions as it's grown up over time, and you look at the vertical bar of where we are today, these are our emissions, and this is what's happened to the temperature. So it's real, it's serious, and you can see that even if we cut emissions in half by 2030, like all the gurus and the experts are saying, scientists, we have to cut emissions in half. And even if we go to quote net zero, that would be zero emissions, or any emissions we have are absorbed in some way. The temperatures predicted to rise well past 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's going to trail off over many decades, assuming we do this historic, unbelievable thing of cutting emissions. So I'm telling you this tonight because Chris was talking earlier about all these solutions and all this money, and we have to take advantage of it. We have to find ways to do the induction stoves, find ways to move to electric vehicles and all these other things that she was talking about, because this probably isn't going to happen unless we do all the things Chris was talking about. And if it's slower, this is going to be higher, and higher is going to be a problem. So these are the objectives. We have to start bending the curve in 2 years, 2025. We have to get to cut emissions about 45 to 50% by 2030. We have to reach zero emission, net zero by 2050 in order to contain the rise to 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. And so why is this happening? Well, you can see in this picture of the energy generation, electricity generation here, the automobiles, the cars, the homes that we mentioned earlier. And if you were looking at this picture in the bottom right, if you were looking at homes in Australia, 25% of these homes would have solar panels on the roof. But no, we're not looking at that. We're looking at the USA, and only 3 homes in that picture have solar panels on the roof. So we have an awful lot of work to do, let alone the fact that we cannot be burning trees down, having forest fires, and putting livestock that takes away from our farming and generating tremendous amounts of methane. So it's serious stuff, and it's causing these droughts and these fires and the floods in the weather events, let alone extreme weather events, because the jet stream is now becoming unstable because the polar regions are 5 to 10 times hotter than the rest of the world. And it's causing the jet stream to get wobbly. And then the wicked bad cold comes down, and you have these atmospheric rivers that they've been talking about on the news all week. And let alone, I haven't even been talking about pollution like, PM 2.5, black carbon and things like that. In Chicago, our city is number 3 on the hit parade in the top 10 of cities with serious problems. So if you live in Oak Park, that's where you are. And so think about that for a second. And what's this all about, though? This is all about the fact that we have our kids. And we look at this child here and we say, stop climate change now. Well, if we have to stop it now, because when she's 40 years old in 2050, what world will she be in if we don't start making changes now? Because what we do now is going to affect her world in 2050. And if we can't wait to 2050, because that's going to affect the world in 2080. So you're going to kill us, is what this little girl is saying. And whether it's mentally or whether it's physically, there's some truth to all of that. So I wanted to move ahead and say, what are we going to do about this terrible thing? Well, we believe in the Climate Reality Chicago that man-made greenhouse gases are the primary source of these global warming emissions, that climate change is an existential threat, urgent, bold action is necessary to cut the emissions and increase the sinks like trees and so forth, and that the world is pressure and we have to protect the ecosystem. So our mission is to engage with people in coalitions, to form alliances, to advocate for the policies, for meaningful action. We are right there talking to the CTA about not ordering diesel buses and going electric. For example, that's our mission. Our vision is to envision a world where everyone understands this urgency, which I'm trying to convey tonight as a part of our strategic plan, and knows what they can do about this. So we're going to get to that in just a second, because the can do is what's important. And so we're trained climate reality leaders, or we're activists all working together on teams. We have like 14 teams, and we believe that we must pursue a just transition while we do this. So with that said, our value is these areas: clean energy, clean transportation, clean communities, and nature-based solutions. And central to that is the money pipeline that you see at the bottom gray section here. So for example, divest, defund, and desponsor. We have to make fossil fuels illegal. We have to start working with insurance companies because they're the ones paying for all the damage of all the devastation I just talked about. And of course, as the previous slide said, environmental justice. So with that said, our imperatives are greenhouse gas mitigation, public education, help us please, membership engagement, help us please, chapter communications and marketing, what it is that we're doing, because fossil fuel companies are very good at communication and marketing their wares. And we have to join with other groups to do a better job of that. And so I mentioned divest, defund, and desponsor, legislation and regulation. We're all inside those things, and advocacy and public pressure has got to be huge. So our goals is to take our goals and align with those problems, those focus areas, I should say, those strategic imperatives, and line up our organization to deal with it. So here we are. This is page 1 of 3 of what we have for groups. We have 14 groups or 14 areas. Energy. You want to learn about solar energy. You want to contribute to solar energy. You want to help us with solar energy. We have a team. We met last night. Great meeting. Electrifying public transit. We're working with Pace Bus, the CTA, stopping diesel buses, moving school buses to electric, etc. And same thing, your private car is a huge portion of transportation. So that's important. We can't forget about our cars. And then this issue I mentioned, the agriculture was 11% of emissions. How do we use regenerative agriculture? If you're into soil health and these kinds of things, join the team, work with Don, who's in charge of that team. Contact us. We'll put you in touch with Don, because we're working on the farm bill right now, along with the tree group is working on agroforestry in order to protect trees in Chicagoland. And how do we get many trees out there? The next group would be plastics. Plastics are everywhere. How do we stop it? How do we ban foam? And you can see the list here. And Chris is actually co-leader of the Suburban Climate Action Team, SCAP. And you heard what she had to say. She's all over the place in Aurora, in the suburbs, in various cities, Naperville, et cetera. And we have a Chicago team, though. The aim is to do similar things. So if you're in Chicago, great. And then the defund, desponsor team, we're talking right now about things like insurance companies and also legal issues about making fossil fuels illegal. And then finally, we have public education. I mentioned we need you if you're a teacher or you know a lot about how to do that better and can help our teams do a better job of these presentations. Youth Coalition, we had Danica, who was, they were doing a die-in at the Chase Tower in downtown Chicago 2 weeks ago. It was in the Trib. And there's also coming up, I made an announcement at the beginning to do more of that in Chicago. Youth professionals getting together, I guess under 40 group types of people on what they can do and how they can manifest change at their professional groups. The communications group, we could use some help there. Website design, communications, newsletters. And then finally, membership. We need to really take hold of that. We have nobody helping us with membership, and engagement is critical. So if you're in HR or in some related area and can help us out, just, that's what we need. And finally, the last thing would be, how are we going to realize this plan? Because the disasters up front got to be solved. We have solutions, we have approaches to solve those, like expanding and increasing chapter engagement, like focusing in on the top priorities. There's endless amounts of things that we could do, but not all of them are equal. So we want people to have their passion. At the same time, we want to make sure we put a disproportionate amount of focus on the most important things to get the most important results. And that's what we try to do on this strategic plan. And, we can't do it all in the group. So we align ourselves up with other groups, the ICJC, IEC, 350 Chicago, et cetera, to develop alliances. Some of them specialize in areas that we don't specialize in. And, synergistically, this all works together. And then expanding the education, I mentioned the teachers, if you've got experience there, because getting out the fact that the scientific consensus says 97% of scientists believe that climate change is an existential threat to humanity, but only 29% of people even know that. Well, everybody's got to know that. And then finally, we have to increase chapter communications. And, frankly, as the fossil fuel industry does, they market their wares. And I can't believe when I see a Chevron commercial, I just want to scream, but they're very good at it. And so to the extent that we can improve what we do in the chapter to appeal as close as possible, to compete with them, of course, we need to do that. So really, I just went through a whirlwind tour of the 5 major areas. And I thank you very much for your time. And the links are all in the chat, by the way, and we'll make sure to get that out to you. Any questions on the strategic plan or anything we haven't covered? We have 10 minutes left.
Dean, it looks like you have your hand up.
I'm actually applauding because you guys are great. I'm a co-chair down here in the Houston chapter, and you would think, being the hub of all this, we would have as many passionate people, and they're passionate, but they're kind of hiding. And so our challenge is to pull them all out. You guys are light years ahead of us, and I'm very envious, and I'm also very proud of what you guys are doing. So keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Dean, I really think that we've got a lot of really committed people, but what surprises me is that with all the people that have been trained by Al Gore over the last several years, a lot of them get trained and then they don't dig in and actually try to make change at the local level or at the state level or at the national level or with companies. And what I wish we could all figure out, and it's not, the people on this call aren't the issue, it's all the people that are not. How do we motivate more actual volunteering to take on jobs, carry them out, further these goals? I feel like the work is endless, but it would just be so great if we could have even a higher level of participation. I'm sure every
Pamela,
organization says that.
let me tell you, they had the Power Up training in Houston last October, and half of the attendees were trained climate leaders kind of coming back, no mentors, and the other half were local advocates from the Gulf Coast, right? From Louisiana, Florida, Texas. And it was amazing because I met a whole room of people who are doing things every day. And what we've learned through our chapters, people don't want to come to these meetings and they don't want to sit and talk. They want to do something. And it's hard for us to be motivated. So now we've aligned ourselves with these organizations that are already in the community. And all we want to do is support them. We're not going to tell them what to do. We're not going to tell them how to do it because they already know, but we'll be there to back them up, to be at their marches. That's how we're starting to get more activity, because folks want to do something, but it's hard to do. But there's others that are doing it. So let's join them.
I totally agree. And anybody listening to this, contact Pam. She's got 14 places or 10 or whatever it is that we could use your help. Hobie, you had your hand up.
But that's a really good point, Dean, because right here in Oak Park, we have a climate action network. And here locally, the participation is much higher. And it's because it's in people's backyard and they can see what they can do.
That's true too.
It's so much harder when the problem is like this big and it's out there and people don't know how to get started.
Well, you saw the 14 major areas where we could use some help, and it's serious. I just want you all to know that, you know, I put a kind of burning platform of seriousness of the issue and the urgency of the issue at the beginning. But we really believe the solutions are there to get us to 2030. You know, we may not have a trillion trees by 2030, but we can start moving in that direction. We can start moving, helping, and all this money that Chris talked about from the IRA and the infrastructure. It's not perfect. You know, I'm the EV guy in the team here, and I can tell you that I'm pretty critical of some of the things, but it's a beginning. It's much better than nothing, you know, and so anyway. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, I guess we're 5 minutes early. Excellent. Thank you much, everybody. Cynthia, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Chris, how do people get your fact sheets?
They're on our member drive in the SCAP drive, but I can also email them out as PDFs. So what
Okay.
I'll probably do is do the IRA one separate and then some of the other ones, the stretch codes. And we also have a lot more. We have solar incentives and all kinds of different things. So if there's something you're looking for, please
Well-
reach out. We may already have it.
Can we maybe get together, Chris, when I send an email out with the YouTube link of this and all of that, and maybe we can attach PDF of that stuff?
Yeah, I don't know if you'll be able to attach it all at one time because the files might be too big, but
Oh, okay.
I can send them to you. You can forward.
All
them
right,
to-
we'll find a way. We'll find a way to get out. And Denise, did you have a final comment?
Oh, that was what I wanted. I wanted to know if I could get some of your slides. I'm dying to get that one.
Yeah, you'll get them.
And,
Yeah.
and Tom, what I
Oh,
noticed is
Make sure you put emails in the
links,
chat. Yes,
you,
Dean?
you can put a link to the hub. So if you have them in the hub, just put links and then people can get in the hub and then you can go through your
Yeah,
materials and get what they
we need
want.
to do better with the hub. We're behind at times.
All of us do. You're
Sorry
you're
about
okay.
that. All right,
I
anything
just
else?
I forgot one other thing,
Yeah,
Tom.
yeah.
April 19th is Lobby Day in Springfield.
Ooh.
We just got an announcement from the Illinois Environmental Council today, and they are looking for people to join them in Springfield for lobbying our legislators on environmental legislation. And man, the list of environmental legislation, the bills is so long. There are bills in transportation, composting,
Yep.
building decarbonization. I mean, there's just everything. And we could really, you know, the lobby day could really use people to show up for the day, and IEC gives you all the guidelines. You don't have to figure it out yourself. But the more people that show up in the offices of our legislators, better.
All right, we're 2
Oh,
minutes
Denise,
early.
Denise, did you?
I just want to follow up, write letters. I mean, I can't go to Washington DC to testify. Write letters, please write letters. I write a letter every night to 3 of my government officials. We've got regulations coming up. The fossil fuel industry is pushing against those regulations. And those regulatory agencies need to hear from us. Please write your letters. Please write your letters.
Yeah, and there's the Climate Now app, which is a way to do some of that too. Anybody who's interested in that, let me know. All right, then. I think we're wrapped up. Pam, any last comment? Thank you very much, everybody.
Oh,
I
Bye,
hope you have a
thank
good night.
you.
All right,
Thanks
thank
for all
you.
you do.
Bye.